Well, let's see how that goes. So, in theory, you've had about 50 seconds of silence, although apparently we've been live for 11 seconds. I don't know. I'm trying out lower latency. So I'm going to say, hello, please send me a message now, chat, now. And then I'm going to watch the chat and see how long it takes for people to write the word now in the chat. I'm trying a lower latency than usual to see if that means that we get a more instantaneous and less distracting chat going on now. That's not too bad, I suppose. Okay, yeah, there we go. It's all popping in. Hello, marvellous. Right. It's Rail Natter. It's episode 214, finishing the Borders Railway with maps and routes. It's a I was going to say slow-paced episode, but actually I've no idea whether it will be. It's an episode where we're going to be talking all things... all things Borders Railway, in fact. Or rather, should I say, the Borders Main Line. Yes, we're talking about this thing here. It is... In fact, let's get the Wacom out. Here we go. Here we go. We're talking... we're taking to Martha's neck of the woods. Martha, don't dox yourself in the chat. Raphael, good evening, Mr. Dennis. Not too late. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm late, everyone. People in the audio only. Well, I'm late in the sense that it's starting to take me longer to get the audio uploaded because I'm not doing it after the episode because it doesn't. I don't have evenings other than Natter evening, so it's hard. I find fewer chances to get in and upload the audio, which is why it's being a bit less. Within the week. I'm trying to get it within the week, but I haven't managed it to be always within the week by the next episode. Sorry, audio only listeners. Anyway, this thing, the Borders Railway. Well, here's the Borders Railway, which was opened in 2015 to great success. Here's the rest of what's generally known and often referred to as the Waverley Route. Also often includes the little branch to Langholm. There's Hoik. St Boswell's, Longtown, Newcastleton. Anyway, this thing, we're going to look at this thing and what should happen with it. Anyway, that's this episode. I'm not going to waffle because... thanks, Emmett. I'm not going to waffle because we need to get on with it. We're going to try and keep this into a tight hour. Will we manage? Of course we won't, but let's try as hard as we can. Everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. And as the Intercity 225 fades away, we must start with the news, because some more driverless cars news. Driverless cars will never exist again. Luminar, maker of LiDAR for autonomous driving, lays off 20% of its workforce. There's a continuing demise of this sector, despite the rail. Actually, you know what? I am a huge fan of Victoria Scott, and the two of us are competing with each other on Well There's Your Problem podcast episode count. Victoria's winning at the moment. I need to get Victoria on, don't I? Because Victoria knows all about this stuff. So I want to understand what Victoria thinks about driverless cars, because I don't think they'll ever exist. I would be very cool to get Victoria on to inform us otherwise and to talk about some of the challenges with this stuff. And we'll give Victoria a chance to speak more than she did on the most recent TF. Oh, I'm joking, of course. No, Victoria's awesome, and I would be very cool to get Victoria on. Anyway, I digress. Driverless cars will never exist. Luminar, they make LiDAR sensors for autonomous driving systems. They're shipping certain types of sensors to various car manufacturers. And it's transitioning to what they are euphemistically calling an asset-light business model. That means that they have fewer staff. Also, they're outsourcing production, and 150 people are losing their job. So fantastic. Wonderful stuff. All good stuff. This is an interesting one from a little blog maintained by Julian Vaughan here. Yeah, it's an interesting accessibility, unpicking some of what was said at the House of Commons Select Committee at the end of the House of Commons Public Accounts Select Committee at the end of April. I was going to potentially pick this one up as an episode actually, because there's a lot to dig in, but I thought I'd very quickly cover it in the news. There's what was really depressing was Andrew Haynes' responses, saying the fundamental reasons why they were not delivering better accessibility for passengers particularly for passengers that require assistance, were these 4 things. Number 1, selecting the wrong stations for accessibility improvements. Well, okay, I mean, all of them is the answer. But anyway, lack of understanding by Network Rail of the scope of schemes. Okay. I mean, interesting to... Yeah, anyway, we'll have to listen to pick out what's going on there. But certainly it's the case that Network Rail often doesn't understand what it needs to be delivering. The thing is, too much of this scope looks like cost-cutting. So the third thing is getting too involved with stakeholders, resulting in an increase in costs. Well, I mean, fundamentally with an accessibility remit, you need to be getting involved. You know, you need all those stakeholders to be getting involved, so the accessibility is actually meaningful and works. And then the fourth one is that Network Rail are not good at managing smaller schemes such as step-free access. It's because they shouldn't be individual projects. It should be a program. You should have a dedicated team that just delivers these for every single station in the country and works its way from top to bottom. Yeah, really fundamental problem in the way that work has been delivered. Very, very frustrating. Anyway, more to pick out in that one in the future, I think. As of today, I think, there's a... Louise Haig very disappointingly painting this as a bad news story, but actually it's a good news story that the government has accepted that it's going to spend £1 billion on the bored tunnel between Old Oak Common and Euston Station. What on earth Euston Station will actually look like is to be confirmed. But basically, it would cost them the same amount to bury the TBMs ready to reach Euston as it would to just create the tunnels to Euston. So I'm hoping that they're going to build the tunnels as planned. Let's see, Louise Haig disappointing to cast this as a bad news thing. It's like, no, this is just some mild pragmatism happening from government because they realise that there's no they're having to spend that money anyway. No matter what happens, that money's getting spent anyway. And then just to round out the thing is Victoria Seabrook picking this up for Sky. Government's climate plan ruled unlawful by the High Court. Yes. The government has been beaten in court again by campaigners who pointed out that its plans to cut emissions and reach climate targets are coming up short. What happens with this is the government has to go away and reevaluate its proposals. So yeah, there's some there's some serious problems with government's plans, as we know from lots and lots and lots of this. Someone here is suggesting Anoniano is suggesting that they think the arch, it wasn't an arch, should be reinstated in front of Euston. Oh no, I hate that arch. It's not an arch. It's a hideous piece of. It's just hideous. It was hideous. It was rubbish. I'm not a fan of the old Euston inverted commas arch. It was rubbish. It's fine that it's gone, and it's fine that it'll never reappear again. So. What am I waffling on about? What I'm going to waffle on about is enough of the news. Let us escape the news and talk about, firstly, very briefly, I'll bring my small face in the corner. Hello, everyone. Well, firstly, let's go big face because I'm wearing this T-shirt. With the old... No, I can't do mirror. That's the old National Rail Museum logo. Anyway. It's not an arch because it isn't an arch. An arch is an arch. No, I'll show you. This is an arch. This is an arch. That's an arch. This thing is not an arch. Not an arch is an arch. Oh, you can't see because of course you can't see. A small face right there. Arch. I'm going to do it again now. Here's an arch. An arch is this. There's an arch. Arch. This thing. So this is not an arch. This is an arch. Arch, not arch. Euston Arch isn't an arch. So, Campaign for Borders Rail. So quite a bit of what I'm going to be talking about is stuff that I've done work for the Campaign for Borders Rail, or it's stuff that I've presented to the Campaign for Borders Rail. Campaign for Borders Rail were very successful in getting the first part of the Borders Railway opened. The first section of the railway opened. But for various reasons, as a campaign, this isn't their fault, it's going to be a lot trickier for them to get the rest of the railway opened because it's a very different animal. And we're going to very briefly talk about that. So this, firstly, let's talk about that. A very, very, very brief bit of history. 2015, we got this. So this is the railway down to Hoik was kind of opened first. Actually, you know what? Give me a second. Hold. I'm going to go big face. Hold that thought, because I'm going to read you the precise history, because the precise history is worth just very quickly picking up. Because there's a subtlety and nuance to this that's important. So I'm going to very, 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 very briefly read you the history of this. So let me just do this now. Let's get rid of my face and go back to small face. Very well organised rail ladder as ever. Right, so. So yes. Here we are. So in 1845, the newly formed North British Railway had the intention of occupying the triangle of land bounded by Edinburgh up here, Berwick over here, and Carlisle here. So they wanted to own everything. They wanted to kind of just absolutely own everything in this triangle, right? That was their deal. They wanted to just do everything in this triangle, and so within that, they had already they'd already in the process of building their line around to Berwick, so what is now the East Coast Main Line. So they're building that. So this bit, the bit to Newcastle, they're in the process of already building that down to Berwick, right? They were kind of reluctant to fund a second major railway construction project so soon after that line, basically it was like the line must terminate in Hoik. The line will terminate in Hoik. So the North British were like, no, we're only going to terminate the line in Hoik. So the Edinburgh and Hoik Railway opened in 1849. So this stretch, you could argue the stretch that is the most straightforward to justify from a kind of a passenger perspective at this stage. So this bit was opened in 1849. There we go. So that bit, 1849. Most of it was reopened most of it along broadly the same track bed, although not entirely the same track bed, thankfully, was opened in 2015. But a very important section down to Hoik remains, abandoned. And what about all this bit down here? When did this appear? Well, the rest of it was completed kind of quite a bit later on, so through to 1861. So 12 years later. It's not that much later than actually. So interestingly, in today's money, it cost around about £750 million to build this section through from Edinburgh to Carlisle. So that's it. So about 0.8 billion in today's money through dealing with labour costs and all this stuff. About 0.8 billion quid to build the whole thing. So the whole thing from Edinburgh down to Carlisle built for about 0.8 billion quid, right? And lots of kind of through traffic on the Waverley Route, which was great, but it was very curvy, gradients are rubbish, kind of pretty extreme along the route, pretty exposed terrain. It was very expensive to operate and maintain. Many trains required 2 locomotives to provide the power to climb over the summits. There are summits both. Where is this? There's summits about here. And then there's another summit about here. I think there's 2 major summits. Is that right? It's about there, isn't it? The other side, Fowler Hill at that end. So when it was incorporated into the wider network, it got more traffic, but the long journey times held patronage down. So this was not a hugely successful bit of railway. From the 1920s onwards, rural depopulation, more people owning cars, meant the passenger receipts really dropped to be very low. The West, as we know from the previous episodes we talked about, the Beeching report, and even before that, strategically, the railway was focusing its traffic on core routes, of which the West Coast Main Line was seen as the core route to replace what was the Waverley Route. And then the A7 got loads of upgrades, at which point it became difficult. Beeching did the report behind me. In fact, when I was presenting to the AGM, I actually flicked through to the actual page. I had the Beeching report in front of me, and there were boos. I know my audience, boos from the audience as I read the page talking about the closure of the Waverley Route. January 1969, passenger services ended, and it was gone. Pretty much entirely gone by 1972, and then Borders Railway opened in 2015. Covering kind of the basically what is a suburban route down to Tweedbank. Tweedbank's quite a big kind of built up area, by the way. So that's all fine and good. Lots of people here. Part of an Newcastle main line via Rickerton Junction and Morpeth too. There we go. So there's all sorts of fun discussions going on. So, apparently the route west out of Alnwick is becoming a cycle walking route. The alignment west of Morpeth is a golf course. Lots of discussions going on there. All right, fine, good stuff. Right, anyway, I digress. We're at 2018. We've not even got the maps up. So, and this is what the proposal. So the Borders, Camhaven Borders Rail have been advertising they've been pitching their proposals of a route, and that route, by the way, it goes to Hoik. That's fine, but their proposed route that they're coming up with at the moment, they're being pretty explicit that they're proposing a Newcastleton Longtown route, and you'll see what the significance of this. So they're talking about reinstating the route as was, essentially. That's kind of what the publicity's always been about, and some of that is expedience over trying to make it seem like it's a fairly straightforward thing to do, but that. There are problems with that. That's short-sighted for a variety of reasons. And so this is the presentation I gave them to the AGM several years ago, which is why we shouldn't reopen Tweedbank to Carlisle. Or rather, why we shouldn't reopen Tweedbank to Carlisle. You lot I'm not going to patronise you lot. You're RailNatter viewers. You know the deal with this. You know that we don't reopen railways in RailNatter world. We may well build new lines that happen to make use of a former track bed, but we do not reopen railway lines in RailNatter world. Very cool things being said by Detour in the chat. I did not realise Deirdre happened to have some of the researchers worked with some of the researchers involved with the original creation of Capture at Carnegie Mellon University. That's very cool. Tweed Valley Railway. Anyway, why should there be a railway between Tweedbank and Carlisle? So this is kind of like, let's very quickly fly through the justification. There's a threefold justification. There's wait a minute. You may have heard something there, because why should there be a railway between Tweedbank and Carlisle? I was still waving my beaching. Well, not to reverse beaching, which is the thing that's often said. Yeah, there we go. That was really loud. Did it need to be that loud? Probably. No. As we get, just because closing a railway is a bad idea doesn't mean reopening is a good idea. That's why I said in 2020 on RailNatter. So, threefold reason for building a railway, completing the railway from Edinburgh to Carlisle via Hoik. Number one is local, number two is regional, number three is national. Right. So, the local case is easily and well made by the campaign. So this is me framing the AGM, that kind of justifying this. The campaign. Very good at making the local case. They made the local case fantastically for the absolutely instrumental in being the reason why Borders Railway was opened down to Tweedbank as it was. Right, seriously successful campaign. But getting the line down from Tweedbank all the way to Carlisle is an entirely different prospect. We're talking about a completely different proposition here. This is a very long, very expensive, very sparsely populated section of route that simply does not have conventional business case definitions and modelling will not give you a positive business case to justify spending the money on this railway. It's not going to happen. So let's step back then. So the local case can be made, but is more difficult to justify the creation of this railway. So the regional case, well, if you start looking at populations, well, Melrose has a population of 2,000, St Boswell's 1,500, 6,000 in Selkirk, 4,000 in Jedburgh, 14,000 in Hoik, Newcastle has nobody, Longtown 2,000, Langholm 2,000, there's 110,000 in Carlisle. Kelso also kind of feeds into this, although to a lesser extent. And as we know from previous rail matters, you build a rail network looking at populations. Well, 5,000 is your lower limit, right? So there's lots of there is so if we're building a network, we've done this before in previous episodes. You know the deal with this. If we map in the so that white line is the former route, so it's just the former alignment, not the current alignment, the former alignment. So we drop in here, have a look at so we know the dense population of the Scottish Central Belt, and you can see that we have there's the big populated dense clump. There's Kelso, there's or is that Selkirk? There's Jedburgh. You've got this dense clump, and there's Hoik down here. Hoik decidedly off the route. So there is a logic in connecting through Hoik with a railway line. It merits it with its population, as does the wider route. So it was indeed from the North South Wales episode, which you must go and watch. Yes, so And okay, there's the existing railway. You can see how that fits in. So fine, whatever. So there's the former route and how it kind of tied into the Scottish railway network. So there's another factor at play here. So if we're talking about making the regional case, we have to talk about the A7. The A7 is it's the heaviest used HGV route in Scotland in terms of the tonnage that it sees. A lot of that from timber, but from other traffic as well. That isn't a dual carriageway. That's kind of a single carriageway route. So it's severely ill-equipped for the level of traffic that it sees. The buses are often delayed as a result of that. The roads are very heavily damaged by the HGV traffic. And actually, there are 3 routes in Scotland, by the way, campaigners, get your boots on. 3 routes in Scotland that currently basically have dual carriageways that don't have a parallel railway. Certainly in terms of strategic trunk routes. One of those is the A90 from north from Aberdeen up to Siena. Are you watching? So yeah, this whole section, the A90 up from Aberdeen to Fraserburgh and Peterhead. The A75 running out to Stranraer through Dumfries and Galloway, and the last of them is the A7 running south from Tweedbank to actually further than that, running from Edinburgh down to Carlisle. Now, if we zoom in on that bit, you can see here we've got a section of that has been paralleled by the Borders Railway, and it is exceptionally well used. The Borders Railway continuation, as you might call it, also parallels the A7 broadly, and so there is a merit from my perspective. This is one of many, Deirdre and others we've been involved in. If you've been involved in episodes and chipped in on episodes gone past where we talk about data-driven network development, one of the factors I would always throw in is if there's a dual carriageway, there should absolutely be a paralleling railway to that, because if there's a dual carriageway, it's likely because it merits that level of traffic. Or strategically, politically it does, and if that's the case, then there should be a parallel railway as well. And that's absolutely the case on the A7. The A7 isn't dual carriageway, by the way, but it is a strategic trunk route, very, very heavily used. Stephen Selby saying, these are not just dual carriageway, but they're part of the strategic road network, so single carriageway routes, but they're on the trunk road network. All the other trunk roads... kind of strategic trunk routes between major cities have a paralleling railway of some kind, and then so let's keep ramming on because I don't want to reach at 4:30 without us looking at fun stuff. Key thing, so regional picture, it's not just about passengers either, because there is an enormous amount of freight along this corridor. Martha's already pointing out the fact that there is significant population. There is reasonably significant population along the kind of the corridor, as I picked out earlier on the map, and even if those individually don't merit a railway connection, combined they can do, absolutely. You just look to Switzerland and Austria to see how that kind of works in practice and how it drives modal shift critically. So yeah, there's absolutely a need for us to better shift freight off the A7 and its connecting roads onto the railway, but there is no railway to do that with, and there's also a very limited capacity in the West Coast mainland, which we'll get to momentarily. So there are significant regional goods flows both by road and by rail already. Those would be well served by a new Borders mainline. So let's look at the national case. So let's step back and look at the national case very briefly. Okay, so the big national case is global warming, global heating. We don't need to dwell on this one at all. You get the picture. There's the fact that we need to tackle it proactively, but also the reactive stuff. We have, we're looking at the impacts of climate change on our infrastructure is significant, and so we need resilience. And resilience also means duplication. It means it means choice. It means options for diversion routes and so on. So in terms of upgrading our railway, not just proactively but reactively, involves a lot of rewiring our existing network, both literally in terms of wiring it, but also metaphorically in terms of remodeling it, increasing its capacity. But also needs new lines, new railway lines. HS2 being a core one of these. East West Rail is a good example. Lots of other railways needed. Trans-Pennine high-speed line also absolutely critical. And there are other reasons strategically why bet more rail on roads is more freight on rail rather than on roads is a good idea. There's driver shortages, serious driver shortages. Tesco, of course, through the lockdown were very pleased with themselves, and they credited the fact that they've been using the railways more than other supermarkets, the fact they managed to keep their shelves stocked more than their competitors. Rail has already been providing a solution for driver shortages broadly across freight, so critical. And Martha's already pointing out that the kind of the key points that's why the Borders Railways becomes crucial. HS2 north of Manchester is not HS2. It's just running trains on the existing railway, and as a result of that, it is at best not improving capacity. Actually, as we know from HS2 trains, if they're running short-formed, as they will be in the current plans, they will be drastically reducing capacity on the West Coast Main Line. And even in the best case scenario, with the best plans, fully built HS2, we're talking about a serious demand, particularly given we're moving seats over, traffic over from the East Coast Main Line onto the West Coast Main Line in terms of the London to Edinburgh traffic. We're talking about a reduction in capacity on the West Coast Main Line for existing services. So we're hitting any local provision, of which there's hardly any already. We're hitting that to nothing, but also critically, we're bruising the key freight corridor up into Scotland, which is the West Coast Main Line. So we need alternatives. We need, if not a capacity boost, then at least routes that we can divert and turn into heavy freight corridors, because HS2 is causing severe problems north of Manchester. Particularly for these monkeys. Look at these things whizzing up and down. I look forward to this thing being reliveried with a double arrow. Anyway, I think a double arrow at 88 could work. Someone mock it up. Let's see what happens. The way to do it is to keep it simple. Is to go for a very, very simple single colour with a prominent double arrow and nothing else. That's how to livery that train. Super simple. Super, super simple. Anyway, those cause issues. So here's a bunch of railway lines, including the former route here, picked out in white. So if we have a clogged West Coast Main Line, well, it's already clogged. HS2 is going to make that a lot worse. So how do you deal with that? Well, if you have a situation where you start diverting freight onto the Settle Carlisle line, which would be not a bad idea, upgrade the Settle Carlisle line, upgrade its signalling, and start running some of your heavy freight up the Settle Carlisle line. Can you do some of the less... So you might not do it with intermodals that can run pretty fast, but with other freight flows, you might start using the Settle Carlisle. The West Coast Main Line is a waste of time. So do you provide an alternative route with a new Borders Main Line? Well, absolutely. And for example, so it's not just the capacity, as I talked about resilience. This is when the West Coast Main Line got absolutely wiped out by severe flooding and bridge scour. Is it Lamington Viaduct that got wiped out? Yeah. West Coast Main Line, kaplonked for quite a long time. Not good. So again, we need more robustness, more resilience of our infrastructure. And so if the West Coast Main Line is here, you have the East Coast Main Line here. Both of those are coastal, and well, certainly the East Coast Main Line is coastal and is vulnerable. It's particularly vulnerable in a few places. The East Coast Main Line, the West Coast Main Line is vulnerable at a few pinch points like the bridges, but also it's very, very high capacity. So if you combine the need for resilience, the need for capacity, all of a sudden you see that we need to be looking at. We've got the GSWL, the Glasgow Southwestern line, which provides some freight relief. And actually, Borders may provide additional freight relief. So if you start sending a lot of your freight up the GSWL and up Borders, this could provide relief on the West Coast Main Line for additional freight, for additional passenger capacity. So achieving HS2's own kind of long-term specifications, but also potentially looking at providing better services to some of the routes, not just the kind of stuff out rurally, but also thinking about what the West Coast Main Line on its approaches into Glasgow is serving, because it's a very, very congested bit of railway through there. So that's the picture. That's the local, regional, national picture. And so after giving that AGM talk, I then, in my former employment with Arcadis, produced a report actually turned it into some reality and produced a report saying kind of most of that stuff, and also painting a bit of a broader picture about what the railway might actually look like, with some analysis of the route, of journey times, of how timetables might look, thanks Jeffrey, and a few other bits of input to provide kind of a pre-feasibility, if you like. So basically, the campaign emptied their piggy piggy bank and gave Arcadia some money to just provide them a decent meaty report on where stations might be, what the structure of the railway, what the shape of the railway and its service crucially might look like, and also a view on costs. Interestingly, the costs bit got stripped out of the report and put into an appendix to be hidden away, because this is not a cheap bit of railway. And that's tricky for a campaign to swallow, but it's a hard truth, and you have to make the positive case for what the railway looks like at a strategic level. It cannot exist as a local line. It will not justify its existence on that merit. Anyway, so let's look at the route. It's 2033 section. I'm going to break into 3 sections. Section 1. So there's firstly, there are 2 options here. Section 1, Tweedbank to Hoik. Mostly the 2 options run on top of each other, and any variations are kind of interchangeable between the 2. Section 2 is where the railway splits, and you have 2 options. You can either go via Newcastleton, or you go via, following roughly the route of the former railway, or you go via a new route via Langholm. And in doing so, you can then basically rejoin the former route at Longtown, and then do something, in terms of the route as well. So now this will be tapping into both episodes 25 and 54, the Engineer's Guide to Being a Good Craneista. Did we ever actually talk about the North Pennine Main Line in these 2 episodes? I'm not sure we actually did. I meant to both times and forgot to, and then I was like, something niggling me that I need to do an episode 3 on this, when I will just look at this thing. We'll do an episode on the North Pennine Main Line at some point, surely. Anyway, as an alternative to the A66 maybe, and its dualling and the amount of money they're going to spend on it. Let's see how much the A66 is going to apparently cost to dual in its entirety, and then compare that to the cost of a new railway over the hill. That'll be interestingly. Yes, Stainmore. Anyway, right, so let's start with Section 1. So Section 1 runs from Tweedbank, out of where the existing railway is, loops round kind of the back of, roughly similar to where the former railway was, although not necessarily exactly upon it, through Monksford, into St Boswell's, where there'll be a station, round through the Charlesfield Industrial Estate, through Belses, a bit of wibbly-wobbly, and then into Hoik. So this is Section 1. Let's talk about Section 1. And to do so will involve us looking at CAD. Hooray! So, in fact, let me just very, very quickly do this and let me just do this and this. And all on. Yeah, good, lovely. Fine. Marvellous. Good. So we have the existing railway in white here, so that just for clarity. And we have the 2 options you can see here, one in purpley pink and one in yellow. For clarity, you know what? I might shove in some of the other little options here and there. So there's various options here. So option 1, for the sake of argument, option 1 is the option that follows broadly sits upon the former railway in sort of Section 2. We'll get to that. Option 2, and also that route is a railway designed for broadly for 80 miles an hour. The new alignment via Langholm is designed as a 100 mile an hour railway. So to bear those both in mind. So we're going to follow. So here we are. Here's Tweedbank, the terminating station where they built stuff behind it very cleverly. I don't know if that's clever at all. Dreadful idea. Lots of people discussing the links across over to like Kelso and through. Those could have merit, but they'd have to be considered. Firstly, the scope of this was, look at continuation of the Borders Railway to Carlisle. Those could have merit, but you'd have to build that case and understand that case as an exercise in and of itself. I don't know. I don't know at the moment. So what we're going to be looking at, I've switched on some stuff, so you get what I'm going to be calling a braided alignment here. To start with, also the structures role here, so you've got some structures here as well, of how you're dealing with some of the features that you will be running alongside. So the railway initially starts by running alongside the main road. In fact, you know what? I'm going to just very quickly go big face again, because I want to just pull something up next to my head. There we go. Just pull something up next to my head to be able to cross-reference. Yeah, fine, good. Good, lovely, excellent. So let's get my small face back up. In fact, let's put this here? Small face. No, that's their small face. Good grief. So basically the first sort of first section runs along. So you need to remodel Tweedbank Station for starters, particularly the highway access to the car park, because you can't build a level crossing, so you need to build a bridge somehow. So you possibly have to build a bridge over here, and the trouble is the levels become quite tricky because the railway will have to climb quite steeply after coming out of Tweedbank Station to get up over the access into Gala and into Melrose. So that makes things a little bit tricky. And basically it can follow its path through where the old station was. The old station is in fact still extant. Here it is. So you could achieve this. It would involve a shared route between the road and the railway. It might involve some realignment of the road, but it is achievable. It is broadly achievable. People are asking why no level crossing. No railway should be built. No new railway should be built with a level crossing in this day and age. Just no, not safe. Not good for capacity. Not good for the railway that we should be creating. They're an interface that we can build to avoid, and we should do so. Note, by the way, that I won't be talking about station positions in here, because actually you should not assume that the station is going to go where the station used to be. There are always alternatives for where stations might go that better serve the way that a community has reshaped itself. But equally, it might be that the existing station is the right solution. In fact, there's a whole section in the report that where Mike and I talked about where stations ought to be. Shout out to Mike Gardner, by the way, who did a lot of the work on this little report. It's a good fun project, this one, actually. Anyway, so as you can see, broadly following the route of the former railway through here, but not entirely. So, there's various bits and pieces where we actually break, sections here. This, by the way, very tricky because it's full of Roman ruins, so this is always going to be fun to get the railway going here. You can see broadly new alignment providing you additional speeds. A big box skew bridge thing, not many of those you can justify except here where there are two in a row. Alternative option could be that you actually realign the road and put a smaller bridge on this side to fix this. So there are ways and means. And then again, this starts getting fun because of viaduct reasons. There is no way of avoiding a hefty gorge. So as you're coming through towards St Boswell's here, there are challenges with how you get the railway across this, but you can see that our thick route here are option 1 and option 2 following each other, and then some other options that potentially work. And so you get this, what I describe as the braided alignment, which is where you, and actually a lot of it is where you've got the existing railway. So you can see you break away from the existing railway here because the existing railway alignment is a bit rubbish, in fact. So what is that? Like a 60-mile-an-hour curve, it's a bit rubbish. Trams are an exception with level crossings, yeah, absolutely. Well, by the natter sorter, if you have a level crossing, then you've turned your railway into a tram anyway. Anyway, as we continue, you can see there's a section here where we actually split the two options, even though this is section 1. We're actually splitting between the faster route. The reason for that is because there's actually there's a curve here with a transition that you can essentially get rid of. In fact, the old railway, the old route kinked here, and with quite a slow kink. That you can just entirely remove that and straighten and ease the alignment and so on. So there's some options to fix things that gives you 100-mile-an-hour versus an 80-mile-an-hour railway. So as I say, braiding, and then you've got a nice big bloody straight all the way down to with the odd kink here and there, which then gets us to our next section, which is. Sorry, wait a minute. Let me just. No, I don't want to do this. Sorry, I've pressed some buttons in front of me. There we go. Fine, go away. There, buttons fixed. Right. So next, Hoik. What do you do in Hoik? Well, we're going to talk about some of the various options that exist in Hoik because there are actually quite a few. And you see, it's not just a case of you just follow the former railway. In fact, in urban areas, it becomes particularly complicated. So dealing with how you get through Hoik, that gets a bit spicy, to be honest. Martha is indeed saying it's crayon o'clock. Yeah, here we go. What do we do? Do you know what's fun though? Is as a professional at this, my crayoning gets to be real because it's also my day job. So that's the fun thing about doing crayoning, but being paid to do it. It's great. Ben Rattigan is apologising for being late to the party because Ben Houchin has made quite the promise on driverless buses. Oh, there we go. This is great. How is Hoik pronounced Hoik? because Hoik is pronounced Hoik. The UK has 125 mile an hour trams. Correct, Trainworms. The East Coast Main Line is a tram line. Anyway, right. Let's talk about Hoik. So what the hell is going on in Hoik? So you can see there's a few different things going on here. Firstly, this wacky stuff going on. Well, firstly, it's because you go, well, actually, is there merit in cutting around the back of Hoik, providing almost a parkway station and some new development opportunities on this side of the town, and skipping some of the challenges of building through a very, very tight area, through a very, very tight developed section of Hoik, where the former route is, and also potentially where any alternative route might be as well. Well, yes, you can attempt to do that, and the whole thing you can manage. Also, you do so by getting 100 mile an hour geometry through here as well. So it's a bit of a challenge of how can you achieve 100 mile an hour geometry through. How can you achieve this through Hoik? The next question is, right, well, okay, so if you're not doing that, if you're running in, following broadly the existing railway, coming into Hoik, how does that look? You start getting options of, wow, what the hell are you doing through Hoik? Oh my God. Because this gets very spicy. Good grief. So, yeah, the existing route broadly went through here. There's a sports centre. There's discussion of putting a station over here as well. Discussion of putting a station here and actually eating some of the supermarket ground. This is a good idea. Do this as an option. There's the good thing about the railway here is that it goes through some industrial, in some cases, ex-mill land. There's some residential land that you have to think about dealing with. There's allotments. So this is, as you can see, there's two routes. So this is the Hoik area. So either you follow the existing railway for the most part, you cross the river, you have to deal with multiple bridges over the roads that they've built to get smashing up the formation. There's a bench, a little bench here where you rejoin where the formation actually is, and then you can sort of get a railway through the formation ish. Follow nominally the existing railway until I would suggest diverting away from it and digging a gigantic hole to avoid some of the really slow curves, and also to give yourself a run up at the getting over the top of. In fact, let me just precisely say what the. There we go. What is this little stream called? Let me just remind myself. It is the Stillrig. Yes, of course it is. The Stillrig Water and Littlesdale Road through here. This is Crowbars, isn't it? Yeah, here. Or is it Crowbars? Martha? Just past... Waverley. Hello, Waverley Wanderer. Lovely to see you. In fact, lovely to everyone who's joining from either the campaign or who lives in the area is interested by this. Hello. Apologies if I'm bulldozing your garden or ruining something you like. Railways are pieces of infrastructure and they have to pester people, unfortunately. So as you can see, the old railway is pretty weavy and not that good through here. I would recommend abandoning it. Do not use the existing railway, and you'll see an emerging picture basically as we start continuing on the nominally existing railway route. So beyond that, you get the tie-in of the super fast route. There are also there's an intermediate option that I wouldn't recommend that involves following the Tweed more closely. You can see we have not really pursued that route. It involves some quite disruptive railway construction, but there are options, and actually doing a detailed design, you'd have a quantum more options than this. You'd keep trying option, and test each one in a great deal. Map it in absolutely great detail to basically pick out, okay, almost meter by meter, which option is the right option in terms of who it's impacting, how it's delivering the right railway, how it's minimising the environmental impact, both built in terms of built environment and natural environment, of course, in a big rural area like this, and its impact on industry, its impact on commercial space as well, its impact on flooding, there being a key flood risk area, all these things you have to look at. So you can see how Hoik is a complicated picture. Right, it's a complicated picture. Where you decide to put the station is another thing. Do you have an out of town station that you can therefore put lots of car parking space to grab people from the hinterland? Maybe. Do you have a central station and then perhaps find some extra parking space in here for it, or rely on bus connections to a park and ride maybe, and then filter? There are all these different options that provide. But the more changes you add, the slower your modal shift drive will be. So there are all these factors at play in Hoik. That we all have to think about. So that's Hoik. Now, let's have a look at section 2. And we're going to start by looking at the route via Newcastleton. So Wittrop, so through the Shank End, Wittrop, Steel Road, Whitehall, Hermitage Viaduct, through Newcastle, Nook Pasture, Penton, Riddings, Clew, and down to Longtown. So this is broadly the former railway, but not entirely the former railway. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. Because if we whiz down here, you can see the existing route, because the existing route is the thin lines here are heat mapped to speed, by the way. So, so the blue, as the cooler a colour it gets, the slower the railway is. You can see that for the most part, this railway is a 60-mile-an-hour railway. And that's with some tolerance of cant and making some broad assumptions about transitions. Hoik International borders to Brussels, says Lewis. Thanks, Lewis. So you can see to get your 80-mile-an-hour railway, there's some serious work to be done to get your easements. To get your easements to get an 80-mile-an-hour railway requires some serious physical work. It requires new bridges, new structures, new earthworks, and you can see that it's quite disruptive. But also, another factor in this is it means you get a steeper railway, because the advantage of all the weaving is that you're following the contour line, and therefore you can ease the rate at which you're climbing. The difference that you get from climbing up the hill with cutting these corners is that you have less distance to get to the top of the hill, so your gradient is steeper, hence why you electrify it. We have more powerful trains now, so it's not a big deal. So you can see we're cutting corners, cutting all the corners, but it works, and it works also without causing too many headaches. I don't think I had to bulldoze a single house on this route. Likewise on the other route, So these are achievable. These are eminently achievable options. Real fun is when you get to the viaduct. Look, when you get down to Shank End Viaduct here, and the route, the former route comes in, and the end of the viaduct is curved. However, I'm not proposing to do that. I'm proposing, in fact, to keep a straight alignment through here to keep your 80 miles an hour. That means things are going to get spicy at one end of this viaduct. Of course, when you look in more detail, it might be that you actually, this is quite a conservative alignment. Like, actually, once you start getting into the detail of it, you can probably start creating more curves and actually getting your 80 miles an hour hugging more closely to the former route. It's achievable. But, of course, whilst you're shortening your distance to achieve gradients, you are also shortening the distance. You've got less railway, therefore your journey time's improved, not just by the speed, but also by the and less curvature still means a lower maintained railway as well. Always prefer to demolish commercial and industrial over residential. Yeah, residential is your first priority in terms of not demolishing things. Built area, commercial and residential can be resited without too much pain, with some exceptions, of course. Services also, you don't want to pester hospitals, old folks' homes, that sort of thing. I'm conscious in a minute, I think I put a railway through a residential home, but anyway, this was for sale recently, wasn't it? Anyway, keep going down. You can see these kinks. What's interesting is looking at how bendy the former alignment was. This is, again, it's a bit like a Woodhead route type situation. This is a 60-mile-an-hour railway. This was not a fast railway line. So you get that easement. And again, easement. And we're climbing up the hill to the summit at Wittrop here. And the former tunnel is not in a particularly good state, to the point where I would propose to skip the damn thing entirely, cut a deeper tunnel, so it's a greater distance, a much longer tunnel. So it's about a 1.5 kilometre tunnel, so quite a bit longer, about a mile long tunnel, rather than Wittrop, which is about half that currently. It retains Wittrop Tunnel as a heritage feature as well, so you can run a railway through there. People are asking why it was so bendy. It was bendy firstly to follow the contours so that you minimise the gradient. Also because it's just cheaper. Bendy railway following contours reduces the amount of earthwork structures, so it's much cheaper, much easier to build. Again, you can see much lower speeds here, really slow. What's this one? Oh yeah, it's because there's a bit of heritage. There's still a little bit of heritage line here, which I think is retained entirely. Yeah, I think the heritage line can basically stay as it is with the new line next to it, so the heritage line can kind of hang about. Not that I think they'd mind if they get a big mainline railway running through. So running through here, and then this is where you get this really weavy bit of, okay, the existing railway is like 40 miles an hour. Could you cut it to 60? Well, that's what that looks like. Or do you just create more large holes through an area that is frankly not hugely biodiverse, because it's lots of big plantation forestry through here. So you just cut a swathe through that and create a much greater betterment. Bearing in mind that would create a very steep drop. The reason that's really weavy is because it's a steep bit of railway, so they're putting as much weave as they can to ease those gradients. More curve cutting as we're coming down. So we're going downhill. We're accelerating down the hill towards Newcastleton, and whizzing along through. There's the lots of whizzy bits back and forth here, and then we come through into Newcastleton. Here's Newcastleton, basically resuming the former route for a bit, which is nice. Martha, how are you doing there? Are you enjoying? Is this doing what you need to good? Wind farms are good generally. That's people saying stuff. Remember to at me if you have questions, because I can always. There's so many comments come through. I have to. Oh, also don't forget, there's also the functionality to send a super chat, whatever that means. Which I can't send super chats even myself. I thought I'd be able to send a humorous super chat as me, but I can't. You can send super chats if you want them to be particularly well spotted. Anyway, and again, the former railway whizzes off through a caravan park. Although bulldoze all caravan parks. New route would skip all that, not least because there's a road using it. There's some kind of nice development going on that you can skip by providing an easement of the route anyway. But then 80 miles an hour. So you see just slight improvements to the alignment to get your 80, slight adjustments here and there. There's a bit of a kink and a transition here. Skipping areas that are both geologically and therefore earthwork-wise problematic, but also kind of environmentally sensitive. You can just skip through that by cutting through the hill and avoiding affecting the area above the river there, which is quite pleasant. So you want to avoid that. Likewise, as you get further south, you've got a couple of these areas where you just skip some of the curves again. And then we are getting very close to Longtown, actually. So coming past the former junction with the old Langholm branch, spoiler alert, cutting through and then arriving here into here we are into Longtown. Here we go. So there's Longtown, and you could put your there's the route, and as you see, there's still a bit of a deviation for our option 2 as you come in, and I'll talk a little bit about this area shortly. So the next bit we need to talk about is the new route. This has Italian rail modernisation vibes. We're exploring a variante di tracciato. Is that 2 C's? Di tracciato. No, wait a minute. I always get confused. No, that is tracciato. Martha, shout at me for my dreadful Italian pronunciation, please. Thank you. So let's go the other side. So we're talking Hoik, Teenside, Colterscleugh, TV Head, Sunnybray, Arkin, Langham, Battenbush into Longtown. So what's different about this? What's going on here? So we've got the 2 routes. You can see one of them is 80 miles an hour. It involves quite a lot of disruptive work along a route that doesn't have much in the way of roads to feed it. So actually building the existing route, okay, you've got a couple of centres of population, but that route in the form of Newcastleton, there are also benefits in the fact that it's, you can get across into the national park, you can access over into Kielder Water and all the sort of activities there. So you could provide a station to, almost a parkway station if you like, or a station potentially to feed into Kielder Water. So a type of halt, a very lightly built halt station. C before E and I is ch. Thanks, Raphael. So, but in terms of building this, it's quite challenging to build it because it's pretty rural. The roads are rubbish. On the other side, however, you've got the A7, which does provide you a better connection through a kind of a better access to build a new line, and also you don't have the encumberment. Also, the A7 route is more bleak and barren. It's less environmentally sensitive. So we're going to come to the Carlisle bit. Don't worry. So that side is potentially better to build a railway. In fact, there are also political reasons why you might want to do that, because you're cutting into a different political area, different constituencies, which means you're widening the pool of MPs who might fight for this. Langham is a good example of this. It cuts into a different kind of constituency, and therefore you get the buy-in of another MP. There are advantages to this. Martha's doing Italian gesticulations. Okay, right. So let's go back to Hoik. So from Hoik, rather than going off south and following the existing railway, we've cut a different route through. We're following the river for a little longer, cutting through some of the industry down here, sort of relocating some of this industry, probably smashing through a Lidl, if we're honest. Cutting up through the allotments and up into the parkland. There's some open territory, kind of open land here. There's a stream that you probably need to culvert through here. And then kind of breaking out into some serious structures going on, because the terrain here is pretty spiky. Cutting out, but you can see that you can achieve a reasonably straight, decent alignment through, and following the A7. So the A7 is next to you. So we're going to follow the A7 for much of this route. And really it's a story of just weaving our way up the hill and choosing a route that allows us to, so you get that weave to get your alignment, but also dealing with cutting through the pinch points. So for example, climbing up over the hill is a bit of a pinch point. There may be areas where you realign the road, so I've not included those, but there might be areas where you actually choose to realign the road as it weaves through. But you can see you can get the railway to work through here. It's kind of a pretty fancy lad aligning this, but absolutely this would be double track, by the way. Complete false economy, yeah, it's another skew bridge there. You want to avoid those, they're expensive, he says, as he puts another one in. Again, this is an option where you may, there's a situation, actually not here, there's one further down where you may choose to realign. Floodplain viaduct there, and then you're reaching into Langholm. Now Langholm's interesting because the former railway, as you can see, well, actually you can't see because I've not drawn it up, but the former railway kind of used to arrive in here. And it terminated here, and it was a branch, so tying into it is quite difficult. Also, not very helpful because the alignment is awful. So if we zoom out and look at the former alignment, the Langholm branch was built super on the cheap, just for the sake of them having a railway. It's all rubbish. It's rubbish, and it also is designed assuming it ties into an existing, into the existing Borders Union Railway, which is what the Railway South Hoik was called. But we don't want to do that. If we're linking to Langholm, through Langholm, we don't want to kink off north, we don't want to whiz off eastwards for no reason. So actually, you build a completely new alignment here. You entirely abandon the former alignment stays as it is. You just ignore it. So there'll be a spectacular sort of nice fetching architected curved concrete bridge here. I was getting a little fanciful with my crayons here, but you do something pretty fanciful to get over the river. At which point, nice long curve next to they've already bulldozed the A7 through here with a big bypass alignment. So why in the hell wouldn't you then accept the same with a railway? I'd do the same thing, just a nice straight railway cutting through. It'd be straight. It certainly wouldn't be flat. There'd be lots of nice intermediate grades going on, and away you go. You just build a fast 100-mile-an-hour bit of railway. You could tie it into this our former alignment, or you whiz through continue on a straighter alignment, cross the river a bit further south, away from kind of away from the town. Position your station where there's these weird fishing ponds, probably, and then continue. And so we then go, do we continue though? Because from Longtown, we need to think about how we get to Carlisle. Martha's absolutely right. Never do single unless you only ever plan to run a homogenous local regional train service and you're building the passing places based on the hourly, half-hourly timetable you intend to run. Absolutely. Single track, useless. Politically, is it possible that the Langholm route would be clumped with A7 for overall upgrade would happen? Pretended 1147. No, I would hope not. I would hope that you'd just say that the A7. Well, you could say we're going to resurface the A7 after all the construction works are finished. Detour is saying, screaming, no single track from Ireland, which is a shameful lack of double track. As someone who's currently working on a bit of Irish rail, yes, it's just so much single track. Oh man, so much single track. Right. Let's talk about getting from Longtown into Carlisle, and there are quite a few options. Indeed, bypassing Carlisle entirely is one of them. So, from Longtown, you could follow the former railway, or one connection into the former railway, which is to join up. In fact, a railway that was there until recently, and possibly still extant-ish, into Mossband Junction as an option. By the way, Longtown and also this whole area is a big. This whole area here is a big. Housing development area where they currently store bombs and missiles there. Well, all this area around here is all this ex-military stuff is all like Homes England are up to stuff. Woohoo! I just draw Mickey Mouse there for some reason. I don't know why. Or you can head down to Todd Hills. At Todd Hills, you can split into different options. So I've chosen, for the sake of argument, we chose a route that gets onto the West Coast Main Line reasonably far north of Carlisle, in fact, at Crookdyke. But there are options to connect at Kingmore, or indeed to completely bypass Carlisle and tie in, actually design it around a reverse at Carlisle and tie directly into the set of Carlisle. So you provide a complete relief of Carlisle, which isn't necessarily as crazy as it sounds, because Carlisle is so constrained. So let us look at what this looks like in practice. Let's jump back to the CAD. So from Longtown, you could join up with the, you can see, look, haha, MOD, look, I can see all where you store your bombs. Look, look, I can see all your bombs. And yes, I can see that you've kind of tried to make it look like the fields are still there, but no one's buying it. So anyway, there's MOD storing all their bombs. Oh, look, they're storing their bombs here as well. Look, and they've got all the outlines to try and hide them for, World War II reasons or something. Look, your bombs are all stored there. That's where all your bombs are stored. Lovely. Anyway, thank you, satellites. It's good fun to have all your bombs picked up. Anyway, this is, MOD Longtown. This is rail served, so you can tie into the existing junction. Super cheap. Get onto the West Coast Main Line. The trouble with that is you're then relying on a very long stretch of 2-track West Coast Main Line to get into Carlisle, and with all this extra traffic, not so good. There we go. So let's have a look at, let's keep going down. So forget that then. So let's consider us going, we're coming down to Todd Hills. What are we going to do? So I propose to split off a new route that then come across the now upgraded M6 and the local distributor road, and then tie in. And there's options to, you can have grade separated connection as well, which I think is what I've plotted here. So you could tie in the grade separation as well and split it, or you could just have a flat junction. Flat junctions can work, as we know from Colton. It's possible. You could do a Colton Junction style flat junction, tying into and I'll re-emphasize this, 2-track West Coast Main Line. So at this point, you start talking about, well, actually, there's loads of stuff here as you go past, as you deal with. Sorry, let me just whiz through here. Kingmore, all this stuff at Kingmore Sidings, all this stuff here is. Actually, should you build a 4-track West Coast Main Line at this point, even if they're not right next to each other? Yes, is the answer. Curve to junction looks slow. It's not too bad. This is 80 miles an hour, or good for, and yes, slowing down to whatever the S&C is. Other option is to continue along the former route more. So you follow the former route in, and bring it in to link with a new section going through here, and link it in, coming in north of Carlisle. So you're still dealing with the constrained alignments, but you potentially then can bring it into, well, actually this isn't 4-track West Coast Main Line. There's lots of weird stuff that goes along here on the West Coast Main Line. It's a bit strange, but it also goes down to 3-track here a bit. You need to 4-track the stretch coming through and out of Carlisle to the north. If you're doing this, you need 2 separate railways. You need the mains and the Hoiks, if you like, or the Glasgows and the Edinburghs, you could call them. To deal with creating the segregation, creating the capacity, because it's a very constrained. People are moaning about. I know. I'm sorry about the red on the green, but that's because it's heat mapping, and this is usually just on black. So I'm sorry if the red on the green is not so clear. Hence why I had the yellow and the purple, which is a bit clearer. I know. So that's the other option, and but the entire bypass, completely from Todd Hills, is split off, follow just basically a completely massive long blipping straight line. How long is that? That is a length nearly 7 kilometre straight line. Beautiful. 7 kilometre straight line to go around the back of Carlisle. You have a cord that then links up into Carlisle onto the Newcastle Carlisle line. You go over the top of the Newcastle Carlisle line. You tie into the Settle Carlisle line. For freight, that's great. For passenger services, not so good. So that's why I didn't favour it. So I've gone for the option where you tie in, you minimise disruption. You get this sort of tie-in, this shorter tie-in that comes in, gives you the potential for grade separation around Kingmore, and you can still potentially get a 4-track railway because of the Kingmore sidings. You could create space for 4-track 4-tracking to get you through into Carlisle, ignoring the fact that, or dealing with the fact that HS2 is going to have to 4-track north out of Carlisle anyway. You're going to have to do that for the sake of the timetable. So that there's work that's going to have to get done there anyway. So there we go. There's no avoiding that this is complicated. It's a mess, and Carlisle itself, from a regulating traffic perspective, is really difficult. But HS2 has to sort it out anyway. This is the point. That is going to have to get sorted out no matter what you do. So if you're doing that, actually dealing with there then being a 4-track railway up to a junction that splits off towards Edinburgh is not such a crazy idea. So that's the route. There we go. There's well, rather I said the two options, and you can sort of see what we're talking about here. If I make things a little bit clearer by switching off our intermediate sort of braiding, let's also switch off the bridges as well. So there we go. Oh, in fact, let's just switch that off. So there you go. There are our routes, looking nice and wibbly, because railways are still wibbly even if they're quite straight. So we're talking about an 80 or 100 mile an hour railway connecting up. Obviously, you have to do. I mean, not obviously. If you hadn't worked it out yet, the mixture of single track with dynamic passing loops that you get on the section north of Tweedbank would need to be upgraded to create this overall main line. It absolutely would have to be. It cannot be avoided. So this becomes an expensive project. It's an expensive bit of civil engineering. Both routes, and also accepting that work will have to happen north of Tweedbank, which is so excluding the north of Tweedbank stuff, you're talking about 3.5 billion quid to do this, which isn't that much, but it's a huge amount of money. So 3.5 billion quid, you cannot justify that on a local connection to Hoik alone. And the trouble with just extending to Hoik is that if you just turn it into a railway to Hoik, firstly, I don't think you'll manage to make the business case line up to just create a single, an extension to Hoik on its own. I think you need the strategic case to even get it to Hoik. But if you only do a dead end to Hoik, you've not got the through traffic, you do not get the overall case. So I don't think it will wash its face as a Hoik only extension. I don't think it works. I do not think it works. So, understanding the possibilities kind of requires us to imagine a new railway, not a reopened one, right? Now, I'm sorry I can't be with you today. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be referring to Mike because this is the next AGM, a year after the AGM that I went on my own. We were there as Arcadis, having done this report, and so I did a little video kind of describing what the new railway might look like, and what I do want to say is, so if I'm referring to Mike, then I'm referring to me again probably now, but just imagine that I'm talking to the AGM and Mike was there representing me as my co-collaborator. So, now, I'm sorry I can't be with you at today's AGM, but you're in Michael's capable hands. Michael and I were talking, wondering, how can we perhaps talk about this value creation, what the railway might look like? What's a nice way to sort of frame the potential on the ground? What is this railway going to mean to the communities that it's going to pass through, but also to the rest of the UK? I'm actually currently walking on what used to be the East Coast Main Line. It's a 125 mile an hour railway. Now, you can see on this bridge that I'm sort of currently walking across, it's a very popular cycle path. But whenever I'm cycling here, I often think, what was it like when there was a railway whizzing along, trains going along at 125 miles an hour, 2-track railway, 2-track main line. And it got me thinking, well, this is kind of what we're thinking with Borders Railway, the former Borders Union Railway that was a 2-track main line into Scotland. And I think a really good way to frame this value is to think about what a day in the life of the railway might look like. Our story starts pretty early in the morning, 5 a.m, a day in the life of our railway. We're in Hoik, and northwards, an intermodal freight train carries containers, electric loco, carrying all manner of goods northwards to the Scottish Central Belt. But on the platform at Hoik facing southwards, a Transpennine Express service pulls in. Passengers get on board, just a few, so that they can start their holiday from Manchester Airport. Others are taking the train to connect to go across to Leeds, and even more are getting the early train so they can start a meeting in London. Roll forwards a little bit. We start reaching peak commuter time. Stations right across the line, including on the existing railway right now, are filling up with people who want to commute, not just northwards to Edinburgh, but south to Carlisle, to Lancaster, perhaps even to Manchester. All those people moving,
councillors getting on the train from Hoik, heading to the council office at Newtown St Boswell's. People getting on the train, perhaps even in Tweedbank, with the intention of getting off the train at Carlisle and getting onto the Avanti service southwards. All these different patterns of service, and it's only just the morning. So as things kind of maybe get quieter, we start thinking, the station maybe is starting to be used by leisure travellers, cyclists putting their wrangling their bicycles onto the train, making use of the extensive sort of cycle facilities that have been built at the station, cycle locking. Meanwhile, within the station buildings, you have community spaces, people using them for yoga. There's people having a cup of tea. Whole range of, the railway is not just about the railway itself. It's connecting communities. It's creating a kind of a lifeline to connect these communities up. Create a sense of place that perhaps hasn't existed for quite a number of decades. As you continue through the day, more freight. There's paper trains carrying, China clay. You have goods trains carrying timber. But it's not just the raw timber. Thanks to the railway, there has been a business case and a justification to construct new factories that actually process that timber. So it's not just logs going out, but also it's some of the processed goods, whether it's sort of intermediate processed goods or actually creating furniture, creating products to actually be sold. Opportunities abound. As we get through the day, towards the end of the day, we have commuter traffic again. School kids are hopping on the train at the end of the school day, taking the school train, getting them either north away from college at Carlisle, or perhaps heading away from colleges and schools right the way through the borders. Commuter traffic, or the fact that people are relying on getting off the train and hopping on a bus, electric buses. We have bus charging at the station, so the electric buses can head off to places like Selkirk, Jedburgh, kind of connecting up through lots of places that have previously just not had those connections, those railway connections, or generally just high quality public transport connections. There's so much opportunity. As you get later in the evening, you've got revellers making their way not just up to Edinburgh, as is popular on the Borders Railway now, but down to Carlisle, and perhaps even connecting up to Manchester and the rest of the country. People travelling late in the evening to get to Europe by train. Catch an early evening train southwards, so they can actually connect up to Eurostar and make their way onto the continent. And then later in the evening again, once more we have these intermodal freight trains carrying goods through the night, getting where they need to be. So hopefully by painting that kind of day in the life picture, that's helped to kind of give an idea of what sort of services, what opportunities the railway will enable. Mike's now going to go through some real kind of data, the stuff that you've really been waiting for, journey times, kind of a look at the route corridors, how the railway is actually going to fit into the landscape, some of the specifications of the railway. This picture, the whole picture that we're painting here, is trying to show that this is not a slow rural railway we're talking about. We're talking about a new mainline connection between Scotland and England. All the opportunities that can provide, all the revenue that can drive, all of the connectivity, both locally, regionally and nationally, that this railway can create. Mike, take it away.
Well, no, it's not Mike, it's me still. But you get the picture. Thanks, Dina, for filming that, by the way. She's very good, isn't she? So, journey times are key. Someone's saying it sounds like you're not running a clock face schedule. No, don't get me wrong. We're running a super clock face schedule here. This is, we're talking about half-hourly trains, in my view, if not more frequent than that, but certainly half-hourly trains. And the reason why we can achieve that is some of the journey times. So firstly, let's just paint the picture versus road. So versus road, the railways are achieving greatness because we have, say Tweedbank to Hoik is currently around about half an hour on the road. The railway could take 15 minutes, so you're saving 20 minutes. It's a big win. The Hoik to Carlisle currently takes an hour and 8 minutes. Hoik to Carlisle, the train could take 30 minutes, so you're saving 40 minutes there. Tweedbank to Carlisle, so going right away from Tweedbank to Carlisle, currently on the road it takes an hour and a half. It only takes 45 minutes, so that you're basically halving the time because you're saving 50 minutes there. So you're more than half the time. Or saving more than half the time. So serious journey time improvements versus road. But actually what's very interesting is when we start talking about journey times to other places. So this is where it starts getting interesting. As we start looking at journey times via the West Coast Main Line at the moment. So Carlisle to Edinburgh, hour 19. The journey time via the Borders Railway, and this is not me making up numbers, this is via one of the industry boffins, Ed Jeffrey, Ed concludes that you would, via the Borders Railway, and that's without upgrades north of Tweedbank, by the way, in terms of journey time, an hour 16. So actually, to Edinburgh, from Carlisle to Edinburgh, you're saving a few minutes. So you actually, admittedly, you need to have work done north of Tweedbank in terms of the capacity, but in terms of the journey time explicitly, it's actually quicker to go via the Borders Railway, even though the West Coast Main Lines are faster railways, because the route, our proposed route, would be that much better. This is how you build the case the transport case, the railway case. So Manchester Piccadilly to Edinburgh, 3 hours 9 minutes via the West Coast Main Line, 3 hours 6 minutes via Borders Railway. So what I'm pointing out here is that you divert all of the Trans-Pennine Express route services onto the Borders route. Lockerbie. I joke, of course. Lockerbie you'd have to work out what that service looks like, and Trans-Pennine would be the one, potentially be the ones there. Actually, it wouldn't be. You'd be running it. Whoever is running the service through there, you'd be whoever it might be. It really ought to be a Scottish provider who runs into the Scottish town. But anyway, so Manchester Airport to Tweedbank. This is the interesting one. Manchester Airport to Tweedbank currently 4 hours 40 minutes. Via Borders Railway, it would be less than 3 hours, 2 hours 50 minutes. So, huge saving. And in London to Tweedbank, you're talking, 5 hours 45 to 4 hours 27. So you're talking about major savings here. So these timings are pretty substantial in terms. The point of this isn't so much that they're an improvement; it's more that it's comparable. The key thing is that you're not creating a slow weaving rural line. The reason I included these numbers when I was talking to this in terms of the policymakers was trying to impress upon the campaign and also the politicians of Scotland. You could build this slowly, and it would cost 3.5 billion quid. The fact that you're choosing to improve the alignment is not going to. You're not talking about making enormous savings by making it a slower railway, and you get a worse product. So you can spend the same amount of money and get a product that is comparable with the West Coast Main Line, therefore fulfilling what I've talked about, which is a third mainline railway connecting across the Scottish border. That is what this is about. So. So this is kind of what you can achieve as a service at the moment. So, but about freight, the journey time is a bit different because of the distances to the key. So if we're talking about intermodal freight, the trouble with with getting stuff into Edinburgh rather than the West Coast Main Line is that those most of the stuff is facing the West Coast Main Line, not Edinburgh. So using the existing terminals, Moss End and Coatbridge. So some of the sort of standard moves, Carlisle to Moss End or Felix to Coatbridge, you're talking about increasing the journey time quite a bit for freight for the short moves like Carlisle to Moss End. But if you are thinking about a journey that's currently scheduled at 16 hours 7 minutes, it's increasing only by an hour. So along Felix to Coatbridge, a pretty classic intermodal move. If you're increasing it by an hour, but you get 2 more paths, 3 more paths a day, or maybe, I don't know, an additional path an hour, or 2 paths an hour running in amongst things over the Borders Railway, because you should build this, by the way, to be a high density route as well, more like a Swiss or more like an Alpine main line. You really up the density. Achieve that. That's where you get your major benefits, because you're losing an hour by the fact that you've got an extra hour of faffing around in the Scottish borders, in the Scottish Central Belt, but you get your capacity boost. So the next thing I want to talk about, and this is more for the benefit of the nerds, these are the timings. This is the mixture of timings you get. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail, but you can have a look here. These are the timings that you get for both options for a variety of stock on both non-stop and stopping services. So key factor here that I wanted to point out is the difference in journey time for a stopping service that is electrified versus one that is not electrified. So if you're running the service of the 158 or a 170, you're talking about a journey time from Carlisle to Edinburgh of 2 hours 5 minutes. If you've electrified the rail, which obviously you must do, you get an hour 42, and you can better regulate trains among each other, so you get more capacity as well as the acceleration up over the hill. It makes a big difference because of how steep the hill is. Both hills, you get a major journey time benefit, 25 minute saving. That's a substantial, what is that, 25% or something? Substantial journey time saving from the fact that you running electric versus diesel. There are 2 problems though, and these 2 problems are these bastards. Treasury and all of Scottish government. It's not just Treasury that's the problem here, because unfortunately we have a Scottish government that does not want to build new railways at all. So that needs to change. So you've got a problem with Treasury, but you also have a problem with Scottish Government. It's not just Treasury that's at fault here. The Scottish Government are just absolutely uninterested. And the reality is that this is a UK strategic bit of infrastructure. It maps nicely onto the now forgotten Hendy review about strategic transport corridors in a post-Brexit UK. But both governments, both Treasury in UK level and the Scottish Government in Holyrood both need some serious convincing to make this work. So I've said a lot of stuff there. We can very quickly. I've got 6 minutes before I'm supposed to be hopping into another thing. By the way, there's a Patreon-only stream following this. If you haven't heard the news, by the way, but there are questions. So first, we're going to go no face, and we're going to. In fact, you know what? No, we're going to go no face, and we're going to go through the usual outros, which are audio only. Sorry that the last episode hasn't gone up yet, and this one might well be a bit late too. I'll probably upload them together like tomorrow night or something. Find a time to do it. I need to remove Google Podcasts, RIP. I need to remove these guys again. They're gone. They don't exist. Patreon.com/Gareth Dennis. There is a Patreon stream after this. Look forward to joining it. GarethDennis.UK/merch for merchandise. Suggestions of new merch, welcome. PayPal.me/Gareth Dennis for loose change and abuse, and GarethDennis.UK/Discord for the Discord server where the chat continues ad infinitum. Next week, how to tip trains over on purpose with equations. We're talking about the Kant equation. It's time. Episode 215. That's what's happening next week, which I'm excited about. That should be fun. And there's going to be there might well be an Amphitrust next week as well. Ooh, there you go. Patreon only stream. It is on the Patreon. Raphael, it is on the Patreon. It's literally on the Patreon now. You can go and have a look. Go onto the Patreon where the link is available to the Patreon only stream, which is about to happen in 6 minutes. So, Will Lawton, evening first time live listening. I love it when new people join. There's quite a few new listeners saying hello, piping up. Evening first time live listening. Great content. Thanks, Will Lawton. Absolute pleasure to have you along. Marcus Allen, I take it this is another one where you very much cannot share the KML files. Possibly. Raphael has now seen it. That's fine, Raphael. Don't worry. I'm not holding it against you. Emir Dervel is saying the job title you need is permanent way engineer. Wait a minute. Let's just go big face here. Hello, everyone. So questions are: wanting to build new railways without electrifying them at a time and decarbonisation seems a bit unintuitive. Well, quite. How do you see today's changes in the Scottish Government for the railways? Pass. Difficult to tell. Likely that Labour are going to pick some stuff up in the next Scottish election. People are asking what the job title is to look out for if you want to do this as a job. So my day job doesn't. You have to fight and niggle and annoy people to get into doing this stuff. But I'm a railway engineer. My background is a track engineer, track design engineer, permanent way engineer. I get to do this stuff as my day job, and I continue to get to do this stuff as my day job. But so yeah, track engineers do this stuff. But I'm more than a track engineer. I'm a railway engineer. I've been doing more than track engineer for a long time now. You know, I've done bits of station design, bits of this, bits of that at a high level, feeding it. So you know, that high level, early design stages, I'm a railway engineer. So you want to get into railway design engineering, that's what you want to do. Detour is I'm getting excited to see how well my slides cope with equations. Yeah, I know, right? I'm going to tidy up some slides to make this happen. Let's see. I should do a video with Simon Clarke. Oh, which Simon Clarke? I presume you don't mean the MP. Is there an economic development case study for this project? Absolutely, there is. There's all sorts. Actually, there's loads of stuff to do with what. How can I word this? There is the Borderlands. I don't know how much money they're actually getting, if any, but there's supposed to be a big Borderlands sort of devolution deal they get. Yeah, that sort of thing. How long since your graduation? How long since I graduated? Oof. When did I graduate? It's been 11 years. I graduated in 2013. Is that right? 2008, 2013? Yeah, I graduated in 2013. Yeah, I've been in the industry I've been doing railways as a thing for 12, 13 years. Oh, Simon Clarke, the YouTuber who does science videos. Oh, recommend me to him and we'll try and do a hookup. That'll be fun. I thought you meant Simon Clarke, the MP. That could be more interesting. Anyway, right. What other questions have been coming through? What have we got going on here? Absolute joy to have you all along, by the way. It's been so much fun. Martha, as ever, cracking stuff in the chat. Martha, you made a comment earlier about the Settle Carlisle, the fact that there are a lot of improvements that could be made to its speeds from much of the route. Yeah, lots of it feels very rural and very slow, but actually quite a lot of it could be improved, and a lot of the speeds are less than the line of route would allow, let's put it that way. Does the CapEx include electrification? Yes, it does. Current West Coast mainline strategy is now to deploy buses during engineering works because we have no bi-modes. Yeah, well, quite. So, marvellous. Gareth versus MPs in a wrestling arena when? Ella, you were asking things earlier, actually. Ella, what was your difference between running around a hill versus having a tunnel straight through it? Yes. Let's see. Yes, there was a lot of cheese in that video, correct. And yeah, level crossings are essentially illegal, and kind of rightly so. We should not be putting any new level crossings into our railway. Flatly, they are very bad. Any chance we'll get a narrow gauge episode sometime? I desperately need to go and do a narrow gauge episode over in Wales. I need to do some Welsh narrow gauge episodes, but they involve me reaching a point where we can do that as a family. Yes, future, certainly I'm very keen to do that, but as you see, I've not been doing quite as many travelling around episodes of late because I just don't get away around much as much with the wee one. So if I'm away, it's on very strict business reasons rather than shenanigans. Anyway, right, everyone, I'm 2 minutes away from picking up another thing. I need to close these windows because the bugs are coming in and flying around my light. That was an error, wasn't it? It's getting hot again in this room. Currently, the temperature in here is 24.8 degrees. Oof. Anyway, also 43% humidity for anyone interested. Anyway, right. For that, everyone, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will see you all. When will I see you all? Next week is usually the deal. And for some of you, I'll see you in about a minute. Cheerio.